The US dollar is not just money. It is power. It is influence. It is a global leash. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The reason the dollar became king wasn't some natural triumph of free markets. It was the result of a series of backroom deals, secret arrangements with oil kingdoms that tied global energy to American paper. We call it the Petrodollar System. It is the hidden foundation of U.S. financial dominance. The reason America can print money at will while other nations collapse under debt. And the reason wars have been fought in deserts half a world away. Most people think that dollar supremacy was earned. In reality, it was engineered. To understand how the petrodollar was born, we need to go back to the end of the Second World War. In 1944, as Europe lay in ruins, the United States convened the Bretton Woods Conference in New Hampshire. 700 delegates from 44 nations signed on to a new monetary order. The US dollar would become the world's reserve currency, fixed at $35 per ounce of gold. Other currencies would peg themselves to the dollar, and in return, the US promised convertibility. If you held dollars, you could exchange them for gold from the American Treasury. For a generation, this arrangement made sense. The US held the largest gold reserves. Its economy was unmatched, and the dollar was as good as gold. Nations trusted the system because it was anchored in something tangible. But by the 1960s, the cracks were visible. The U.S. government was spending recklessly, financing both the Vietnam War and President Lyndon Johnson's Great Society programs at home. The Federal Reserve printed dollars to cover deficits, flooding the world with paper promises. Foreign governments, led by France under Charles de Gaulle, began demanding gold in exchange for their swelling dollar reserves. U.S. gold drained away, and the illusion of balance faltered. In August 1971, President Richard Nixon went on national television and announced what he called a temporary suspension of the gold standard. From that day, dollars could no longer be exchanged for gold. The dollar was suddenly just paper, backed by nothing but faith in Washington. For a moment, the world teetered on the edge of monetary chaos. If the dollar wasn't anchored to gold, why should other nations keep using it? The global reserve system risked collapse. And then the oil crisis hit. In 1973, Arab members of OPEC declared an embargo in retaliation for U.S. support of Israel in the Yom Kippur War. Oil prices quadrupled almost overnight. Gas lines stretched for miles in American cities. Europe faced shortages, and the entire industrialized world realized just how vulnerable it was. Energy wasn't just another commodity. It was the bloodstream of the global economy. Whoever controlled oil prices controlled the future. This is where the secret deals begin. Washington saw the opportunity. If the dollar could no longer be backed by gold, perhaps it could be backed by oil. Henry Kissinger, Nixon's Secretary of State, quietly began negotiations with Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil producer and the most influential member of OPEC. The bargain was simple, brutal, and transformative. The Saudis would agree to price all their oil exports exclusively in U.S. dollars. No matter who bought Saudi oil, whether Japan, France, or Germany, they would have to pay in dollars. In return, the U.S. guaranteed Saudi security, sold them advanced weapons, and promised to protect the House of Saud, foreign enemies, and domestic unrest. But there was another clause, perhaps the most important of all. The Saudis would recycle their massive dollar revenues, their petrodollars, back into U.S. financial markets, buying treasury bonds and depositing funds in American banks. This deal, struck in quiet rooms in 1974, was not a treaty debated in Congress or voted on by the public. It was a secret arrangement between two ruling elites. And it worked. Within a few years, every OPEC member adopted the dollar standard. the petrodollar was born, and with it, a new kind of empire. From that point on, if a country wanted to buy oil, and every country needed oil, it first had to secure dollars. That meant demand for the dollar was built into the structure of the global economy. Even nations that despised the U.S. had to hold its currency to keep their lights on and their industries running. The dollar was no longer backed by gold. It was backed by the one thing more essential: energy.